Take it from me, the person who never gets these things right, who often gets so close and then so far. Still waiting for that Tudor Marine Nationale release. It might happen by the time I'm 50. Before the video, I have shared a 4-minute clip that sums up a predictions video that I made. It gives a bit more context about this watch and predictions that I had in July 2021. This is the one time for them to bring out a Snowflake Submariner. So let's say hypothetically that the return of the Snowflake is on the table, that this is where the watch might be going. Why is this a good idea? It falls in line with Tudor's identity even still. Even today, it's one of the most recognizable dials in the watch industry. It seamlessly integrates with the handset that they have chosen, linked to their new lineage and their new way they position themselves. Most of us are probably nodding our heads now saying it's a no-brainer. This is the way it should go. And the next watch that deserves way more love in this category is the Pelagos. It's been around for a long time. It's the first watch they brought out in titanium, had an experimental helium escape valve, an adjustable clasp. So many modern adjustments that made this watch technically superior and efficient next to the typical Black Bay models that we've seen for quite a while. More than anything, it was the one watch that had the Snowflake dial already implemented. In this minor adjustment you're seeing, all I've done is bring the watch's size down a little bit, get rid of all the lines of text, leave 2 lines, remove the date complication, keep the titanium case, maybe even the helium escape valve, and that's it. The watch is plain and simple. It still looks like a snowflake. In the renders and the images that you're seeing, I've tried to appropriately size the plots on the dial to make it look as realistic as possible. Every single plot is slightly larger in size, even the triangle at the 12. It increases the presence, makes it more legible, turns it into an instrument. And the whole purpose behind this configuration was to make it a more legible dive watch for the Navy divers. 2 lines of text on the dial instead of 3. This could be a time where they implement their new Meta-certified movement that they've just released. We look at a front and back image, very basic, easy to understand, the typical Marine Nationale hallmark that you see on most of the original vintage divers. This one with 21 attached to it for obvious reasons, and a small Marine Nationale emblem at the base, maybe. Another thing to note that has been spoken about more than enough now is that it is the icon. It's the one we truly identify to Tudor. The downside is that the Snowflake configuration with its jagged lines and edges doesn't work as well in a 50s inspired case. Remember, this watch doesn't have crown guards, and when you squint your eyes and you look at it, you can see it uses rounded forms everywhere else. The externals are all linked to a more organic nature. We look to the dial and we see that it is purely geometric. The advantage that the original Tudor Submariners had in this category was that their cases were sharp, they were angular. They had elements like crown guards, things that could complement the sharpness of the dial arrangement. I'm still enthusiastic and excited to see what they do release. I have this firm belief that it is going to be a great launch. The end result will be a watch that not only collectors will love, it'll have a link to its lineage and its history, but will also start a new chapter on its own. We could say it's a watch that's going to be building off its own provenance, a set established blueprint that the brand can work off. And even if the result is lukewarm, and it's not a release that we wanted, and the end result is not as exciting as we thought it would be, it still is going to be something special. I just hope that Tudor has approached this exercise with the same amount of creative enthusiasm that a lot of us have, because this very well could be the most standout watch release from them this year. And now we have until September 1st to wait and see. At the end of this Marine Nationale video I made, I think I said something along the lines of, if addressed correctly, Tudor has the potential of creating a knockout of a dive watch, possibly one of the best they have ever done, paying tribute to their heritage, their history, while also forging a new path forward, helping define the brand in a modern direction. And this watch that is unofficially released at the moment looks like it'll do just that. And right at the beginning, I will say that its design is better than I could have ever imagined. The people responsible for coming up with this creation have done excellent work. Up until a couple of weeks ago, I didn't know this watch existed. It was because of an email that arrived in my inbox that I've received most of this information, and it's because of Mr. F, for the sake of his anonymity, that all of this is possible. The images that he has shared with me have been able to help the direction of the renders that you will be seeing. Bear in mind that the renders that you are about to see are not official. They've just been pieced together with a paintbrush. After thanking him for sending the photos to me, his email back reads that he found pictures on a French Instagram page and also contacted a few other influencers about this watch. A store in France went and sold one of these official Navy dive watches for what he has heard were about 23,000 euros. Many of the first photos he found was shown on the official French Tudor fans' Facebook, but the store who sold this first Navy dive watch wasn't able to disclose anything about the watch's scale or dimensions, just verify that it is an official watch issued to the Marine Nationale. And from some of these leaked images we've seen, the watch can be identified on the wrist of a Navy officer. So not only do these new Pelagos Marine Nationale dive watches exist, there are also civilian models that we will get into later. Very basically, we could say that this new model is a facelifted Pelagos. It's seen a couple of revisions. We can count on our hands how many improvements have been made between the original model and this current example. But we can easily see it's the modern way of paying tribute to those 7016 dive watches, the original Marine Nationale Submariners. It looks like a Tudor Pelagos, but there have been lots of little incremental changes that help redefine the direction of it as a legitimate looking milsub. First thing to note is that we are unsure about the metal chosen and the size of the watch. Looking at the images, the watch could be made from stainless steel, and judging by the overall size, it could be anywhere between 40 and 42 millimeters. Might even be 40 millimeters. I think the scale of the Pelagos has been brought down in size. Before moving to the dial and the bezel, the biggest change is the case. We notice that it's no longer just your typical lug. It actually adopts an integrated skin diver case. There is now a rectangular block on either side that connects the lugs together. But what is even more interesting is that this case is what we could call a full monoblock construction, since it doesn't have spring bars. Instead, it has metal tabs that connect the lugs together. Very true for the watches that were made for the Ministry of Defense through the 1960s and the 70s. Some of the eagle-eyed viewers might be seeing that I'm wearing one. Watches that have spring bars that are in fact welded to the case. This is a modern direction that I don't believe has ever been implemented before, since manufacturing has come along such a way since then. The only watch I can visualize from recent memory that used similar properties was the Omega Ultra Deep, a Planet Ocean that was aimed to compete against the Rolex Deep Sea. The metal tabs were not connected in the middle, but the principle remains the same. And this immediately evokes structural integrity, gives the user faith that the watch is not going to be falling off the wrist anytime soon. It makes the watch feel more sturdy, function better, and also give that vintage military look that we love as enthusiasts. Looking to the bezel of this new Pelagos, this is a huge change. Not something that I think any of us imagined would be done. Not only do we have a fully graduated layout, we also notice that the numerals have been moved around. This is now a countdown bezel, something a lot more old-fashioned, a bit anachronistic, but also one that calls back to old designs and is practical if used correctly, especially if you know the time you are going to be recording. The changes don't stop there. We move to the dial and we see that it has been overhauled too, where the original Pelagos had a stepping to its dial from the rehort down to the base. That arrangement doesn't exist any longer here. It's a much flatter surface-to-surface contact. We also notice that it is a no-date complication watch. There is a bit of debate at the moment on whether or not it has applied batons or painted-on batons. So we could say that the Marine Nationale model is a prototype that hasn't been fully realized yet. The question is still up in the air whether or not the batons and plots are applied or painted on. Then we see for the Marine Nationale piece, it uses 2 lines of text. Pelagos, 200 meters. And that is the essence of the watch. Simple, easy to understand, a brilliant execution. It's a dive watch that we can believe is going to be so useful in the field. So we've pieced together the basics about the Marine Nationale partnership, this prototype that exists. This watch has been seen on the wrist. There's an example that's been sold already. So it's legitimate. This is a real thing. Even looking to the case back of the model, you see it says MN21, which was a complete fluke. I'm glad I guessed that one right. The question remains, what about the civilian variant? Is there going to be such a thing? These watches are exclusively made for the military, but is there one that we can all get our hands on? The answer is yes, and I never thought I would say this in a video. We can get an official confirmation from David Beckham. He was spotted wearing the same example of Pelagos on the wrist while supporting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's an NFL team for any of us here who aren't American. He was wearing this exact watch in the stadium, but there is one difference that really separates it from the Marine Nationale prototypes, is that this example uses 4 lines of text. The only omission on the dial that was taken originally from the first Pelagos, 5 lines of text, is the rotor self-winding line. Everything else stays. Before discussing the unknowns, to sum it up, this watch is a facelifted Pelagos. It's going to be using a new movement, I can pretty much guarantee. It's using a steel case by the looks of things. The scale of the watch might have been brought down to 40 millimeters in size. It's using an entirely new case format, fully integrated lugs, a new tab system that keeps it all together. It's got a fully graduated ceramic bezel with a countdown timer. The dial is more flat than it used to be. It doesn't have a date complication. It either has 2 lines or 4 lines of text. For us who will be buying these watches, probably 4 lines. But there still are many unknowns, like when is this watch officially going to be released? What is its official material going to be? What is its death rating? Will it have a helium escape valve? Does this mean the watch will be 200 meters or 500 meters water resistant? Will this watch be given to us with NATO fabric straps, with Velcro straps, with leather straps? We can clearly see that it's not going to be using a bracelet. Being able to sit down and work through these renders, putting a paintbrush to paper, and having a good look at this watch and thinking through the process and seeing how it presents, I am beyond impressed with the final idea. It is so well done. After making that video a few months back, this has exceeded my expectations by miles. And it's so clear that Tudor has kept their word and created something that does deserve respect and pay tribute to everything that they have built before it. This is the modern incarnation of the Milsub, the Tudor Snowflake. It is one of the most successful dive watches in history because of how versatile it was, as well as being supplied all over the world to navies everywhere. This new Tudor Pelagos pays tribute to that legacy. And if the predictions are true, and is in fact going to be officially released, it is going to have the potential of being one of the greatest modern dive watches of our time. The reinterpretation of a classic, now fully realized. It's excellent. I don't know how else I can describe it. Standout performance and better than I could have imagined. If it wasn't for Mr. F, this is true. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know this watch existed. If it wasn't for his email, him alerting me to this video wouldn't exist. And so many thousands of us wouldn't have known about this piece. And I hope this news gets spread around a lot more now. It's a beautiful design that I don't think many of us expected. We were thinking it was going to fall along the lines of the Black Bay because everyone was alluding to that. But seeing the Pelagos facelifted just makes so much more sense, and the idea of the integrated spring bars and fully graduated bezel and everything just works properly. It's so good to see a brand that cares about their history, cares about their product, and this cements that point. It's the one true watch that Tudor fully owns. It's their Submariner. And I believe that with a release like this, many of the naysayers, many of those who were never interested in owning a watch from the brand can now finally get a watch that is officially Tudor. It's really good news. There are so many ways that this design could have gone off track, pushed in a different direction that many of us wouldn't have wanted to see. This just does it all. Does it all. I don't know what else to say. All we can do now is look forward to the release.